Thanks, Sandra. Hi everyone, my name is Kerem Cetindamar. I'm the Digital Project Manager for Leicester Museums and Arts. I'm here with my colleague Nathan Alesbrook, and together we are the...
Just hang on a sec because we can't hear you.
Oh,
Okay.
is that right? Yeah. Hello, hello. Yeah, keep going. And together we are the digital team at Leicester Museums and Art Gallery. Our jobs are varied. We do a bit of marketing. We look after all of the websites and any web content online. One of our main jobs at the moment is doing a lot of project work around Arts Council funded projects. We're a national portfolio organisation at Leicester. And I'm here today to talk to you about a project that we started sort of the middle of last year. The first use of these labels was sort of in an exhibition last year, and we've been using them again this year, so it's sort of still quite a new project to us. To be honest, we've got lots of other much bigger projects we've been working on, and this was sort of one of the much smaller ones, but for some reason the organisers of the show thought it'd be really interesting to come and talk about it, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to talk for 40 full minutes about it, but I'll see how I go, and hopefully there'll be some time at the end where you can come up, we've got some labels you can try out. Nathan's going to have them. He'll be walking around during the talk to hand them out to you, so you'll be able to try them out for yourself. Okay, so let's see if this works. Great. So the initial idea was we came up with while we're planning for our digital activities that would be included in our national portfolio organisation funding proposal. In the Arts Council Equality, Diversity and the Creative Case brochure that they created a few years ago, one sentence that really caught our eye was, we will be here providing support, guidance and funding to help you create new work, embrace new voices and reach out to new audiences. We really latched onto that idea of embracing new voices, and it's something that we have done in Leicester Museums for quite a long time, over many, many years. We've got a really diverse sort of local population in Leicester, and reaching out to local communities and including them in the creation of exhibitions. So consulting has been quite important to us for a long time now. We've got a really amazing engagement team there, which includes some really experienced outreach officers. Using these, the outreach officers have got really great connections with the local communities, and using these connections, we're able to have quite meaningful and effective discussions with our audiences, trying to bring them in for consultations when we're doing exhibition development or we're working on project proposals. And I felt this is really important, but I feel like it's quite an involved way to be engaging with audiences. It's a great way to sort of engage deeply with those local communities, but it got me thinking, is there maybe a more streamlined way or an easier way to try and bring people in to work with them and to hear their voices in the museum, which is kind of the point of the funding proposal. We started to think as well, because in the digital team we run social media channels. It's not sort of, it's less direct marketing, it's more sort of, trying to think of a word to describe it, like feel good. We're not marketing events, we're posting images on we run a Facebook group called The Story of Leicester, and we post images of old Leicester sort of every day, and we have a really great, really active community on there. There's a lot of comments left, a lot of people make those connections and then comment on the comments, and we thought, is there a way to bring that sort of comment section as a physical form onto the gallery, moderated, obviously we want it to be a free-for-all, but we thought about how could we maybe bring that idea of people chatting with each other and bouncing off each other and bring it into the gallery space. And another thing that actually prompted the project is we find that a lot of our visitors will have conversations with our front of house staff. They'll tell them about objects and what they remember about objects, or their feelings about artworks. And there's never really been any proper way to sort of capture those comments. They're sort of just told to the front of house staff, passed on, and they don't really go anywhere. So we thought of a way maybe we could find an avenue that they could be used in some sort of meaningful way. Obviously, we were successful in our funding application, and once we got the money, then I had to sort of try and pin this idea down because it was still quite woolly at this stage. We sort of had an idea of what we wanted to do, but the actual practicality of putting it into place was still a bit out there. We've got a really like a strong green agenda at Leicester City Council. We have a dedicated sustainability department. There's loads of internal processes that we try and follow to reduce our organisational carbon footprint. And with this in mind, the idea of sort of installing always on, lit up LED screens in the galleries, like multiple ones of them, seemed a bit sort of really against that idea of trying to reduce our carbon footprint. This is when we started looking at e-paper technology, because we knew it was quite low power, and that was all we knew about it really. It's been around since the 1970s, which I didn't realise. It really took off with commercial e-readers in the late 2000s. I'm sure most of you have used or at least seen e-ink devices. While researching it, I found out that it's actually being used on the continent quite a lot in supermarkets. They're using small e-ink screens for price labels, and they can be remotely updated. They don't have to go around and change the price on everything. It can be remotely managed. And that started getting me thinking about the idea, and they're interactive as well, they can be interactive. It sort of got me thinking about the idea of maybe this would be a good avenue to go down for this project. They're low power, so they're cheaper to run, better for the environment as well. They're more environmentally friendly than LED and LCD screens because they use less materials in their manufacture. And aesthetically, they fit better into the gallery space because they have that look of paper. They're interactive as well, and obviously the idea of being able to remotely update them if we have multiple labels out in a gallery. The thought of going around and changing each one manually, having a remote sort of content management system was something that really interested us. I did a sort of lot of research, wrote to a few companies. We even looked into maybe getting some produced rather than buying an off-the-shelf solution. But actually, after a bit of research, I found a company called Vision X, who are based in Slovenia. They've got a wide range of experience in delivering e-paper devices. Their main business seems to be around creating these labels. In fact, I've got one here. Some of you might have seen them. So this is the device that we ended up purchasing. As you can see, it's quite small, a 6-inch device, but their main business seems to be that you would have this on the outside of a meeting room in an office block, and it would have a live meeting room calendar on there. So it would tell you, and it would update every time the time changed and someone else was in the meeting room. And the batteries, they last for maybe sort of 8 to 10 weeks we've got out of them, so they last quite a while. But this is their main business, and when I started talking to them, what I found out is actually these devices, they can be linked to calendars, but you can actually just show a web page on them. They're internet connected. They did supply something similar to the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston quite a few years ago, but from what I could find out, they were just being used to replace paper labels, rather than the idea that we're offering alternative interpretation, which is what we're trying to do with this. After some discussion, we ended up purchasing 10 of these devices. We've also, they can be stuck on with, there's a magnet on the back. Obviously not particularly secure, but they use these in the museums. We've stuck them on the outside of glass display cases. We bought a number of wall mounts as well, so they can actually be securely mounted to the wall with a security screw, the usual stuff you'd find in museums. So they all basically need to be set up. They need to be linked to a Wi-Fi source. And this is where we started running into issues being a local authority, which I'm sure many of you are here. So basically they connect to Wi-Fi, you set them up, you configure them, you connect them to a Wi-Fi, but because they're not sort of smart devices in themselves, they're almost like a bit dumb. They'll just show one thing. You can't at the council, obviously our network's completely locked down to approved devices, so we couldn't connect to the council Wi-Fi. We do have a public Wi-Fi, but it uses captive portal technology, which is, you know, when you go onto a Wi-Fi source, but then you have to log in a browser, you have to open a browser page. And because these haven't got a browser on them, you can't do that. So what we ended up actually doing is we had some old tablets lying around from a previous project, and we just bought some cheap SIM cards and we put them in them, and there's one down at the front there underneath the TV, and that's actually what the devices are running off. So it's just over data, but because they use such a small amount of data, you know, a SIM card will last you for a year if you can get one that's valid for a year. You know, a couple of gigs of data will last you for a long, long time. So that was our workaround. We ended up using mobile data technology rather than the Wi-Fi in the building. And in a way, it actually worked out better because we can now get to the furthest reaches of the museum. We can install them anywhere we want. We don't have to have a strong Wi-Fi signal there. We've got multiple sites at Leicester. So we were delaying the project being rolled out to some of our other sites because they don't have good Wi-Fi. But now we're using this technology, then we're able to do that in a much easier and more streamlined way. So at the moment, I didn't mention actually the devices, they cost around £250 each. They are made for public use. They're really robust. You know, we've not had any issues with them from that side of things. We currently use a content management system that's actually provided by VisionX. So it's a browser-based content management system. Costs £100 per device per year. We're planning to bring this in-house onto our own servers, for which there's no cost apart from just your server maintenance fees. Obviously, we have that all in place because we're a local authority anyway. So that's the idea. We're going to carry on with this project, and we're going to bring all that in-house, and it'll save us that, you know, £100 per year per device. So as I mentioned, they can show this a meeting calendar. They can show a single image, an image slideshow, or you can get them to point to a website. So the ones that are being brought around, they're actually pointing to a page on our website. So what we did is we got a new page template made for very cheap on our website that we manage, and it's the exact resolution of these screens. So anything that we put onto this web page will show up in exactly the right ratio. It's great because we can get all the font size and everything for our legibility, for accessibility, so it's the correct font size for the correct size screen. And it's a really streamlined way of doing it. Like I say, the upfront development, I think it was only a few £100 to develop a new page for our website. It's really simple. We can just drop a load of slides, JPEG images in there, and then it creates an interactive touchscreen. This one's not actually connected at the moment, I don't think, or is it? I think I forgot to connect this one, so it's not changing. But some of the ones, when you tap them, they'll go through a slideshow of images, and you can show anything on there, text, actual photos, graphics, logos, and they're all very clear. They look really good on there. And yeah, just this process we've basically set up. It's quick to do, it's intuitive, and it works really well for us. Excuse me. There's just a couple of examples up there. Oh, sorry, I think I've skipped. There we go. Yeah, so I've been talking a lot about the technology. That really is only half the story because the devices wouldn't be anything without engaging and interesting content on them. So I said we've used the labels a couple of times over the last sort of 4 or 5 months. The first time we used them was during an exhibition called Painting Freedom, Indian Modernism and its Three Rebels. The exhibition documented the emergence of Indian modern art between 1870 and 1850. It was quite a wide-ranging exhibition. There was landscapes, portraiture, scenes of religious fables, stylized folk art. And the way that we worked it, so this was after the exhibition had opened, on the first weekend, we worked with our outreach team who facilitated a visit to the exhibition by a local Gujarati community group. We specifically tried to bring in people of different generational ages. So we had some older community members and some younger kids come along with them. And what we wanted to do was, on the devices, we wanted to put them alongside the traditional paper labels that were for the artworks. And we wanted to have quite contrasting opinions or differing opinions that could be presented alongside the traditional label, not in place of it. This was like complementary to the exhibition. And yeah, it turned out really, really well. We got some amazing responses. In fact, I think I've got one here, an example there. So this is the layout we used for the labels. We often, the younger audiences would talk about the sort of aesthetics of an artwork, whereas the older people that were looking at the artwork would they would reminisce often about stories or memories that they have from their childhood. So it was really nice. And this was throughout the exhibition. We had 10 of these labels in the exhibition, so we selected 10 artworks. And it was just a really interesting contrast to the traditional labels, the more academic interpretation that you're seeing. It was very based in sort of feelings and personal stories. So basically, once we got them out, we got them in, these guys in, they worked with us for an hour just looking through the paintings. We recorded them by audio, we transcribed their feedback, and then we made these into the labels that are shown on screen there. After they'd been installed, we got a really, really positive reaction actually from general visitors. We had a lot of people from the Asian community coming in to see the exhibition, because obviously it was specialist about Indian modern art. And a lot of the visitors would tell the front of house staff that the labels almost gave it like a validation, because they were saying what they were thinking as well. So it wasn't that they were being told by the museum what to think about this artwork. It was other people's feelings who were similar to theirs were presented, not as something different, but on a level with the academic interpretation, which I think was really key to making this work for our audiences. And it went really well. The feedback on it was really, really positive on that one. And then for the second use of them, which was more recent, these are actually up in our museum. The ones we've not bought today are up in our museum as we speak. We thought about crowdsourcing object labels. Sounds scary. It was a bit, because we didn't know what sort of reaction we're going to get. But bringing it back to that idea we'd initially had, where we're trying to make almost like a comment section on our physical objects. What we did is we selected 10 objects from around the museum on permanent display. Some that we're sort of some of our more famous objects locally. Say we've got a dodo model that everyone and their dog knows from, locally, who if you've ever been to the museum, you remember it. It was pointed out to every school trip. So, I went to the museum that I'm working at now when I was a kid, and they used to point that out to me. So it's quite evocative. And then some of the more less well-known objects. So one of them's on Egyptian jewellery, for example. But we tried to pick objects where we thought people could either have a strong opinion of them, or it might evoke feelings in them that they can relate to. So costume, artworks of local scenes, that sort of thing. So we set up a landing page on our website about the project. We had an e-form on there where people could submit their comments about the artworks. We posted frequently on social media. We put up really high quality images of the objects, and we posed quite broad questions like, what does this object mean to you? Or what do you think this artwork is trying to tell us? We were thinking about being a bit more specific with it, but then we worried that we'd put people off if they didn't know about what we were asking. So we just wanted to be really broad, just to try and capture as many different thoughts as possible. And it worked out really well. We got some really great feedback online on our social media channels. We got quite a lot of these e-forms filled in on our website. But the best response we had, which is funny because it's sometimes the old way is best, is we put paper slips out in the museum next to the objects that we were asking for opinions on. And we did that during February half term, which is our busiest week of the year. And we got an amazing response, tens and tens and tens of responses from a range of people of different ages. It was a really, really amazing response. And then we typed a lot of them up. We basically then selected what we thought would be nice contrasting thoughts on each object. We didn't put everything up, we moderated it in some way. But yeah, again, it was just a really broad range of responses, from people talking about the aesthetics of an artwork, to people talking about their memories, to people linking. I think there was a comment about the dodo being in Alice in Wonderland, so sort of relating it to contemporary culture or to media. And again, it was really, really different from the responses we'd had to the Painting Freedom exhibition. So it's worked really well, and that is what we're using them for at the moment. We plan to use them again over the next year in a variety of exhibitions. But overall, I think we've had a really positive experience with it. A few technical issues. Some images there of our public call out on social media. So we tried to make it quite fun, quite engaging. Using images obviously is really important. So just finally, as I just mentioned, we felt like it was successful in its main aims to try and bring new voices into the museum space. But we actually, almost as a side effect, we now have quite a quick and easy way to engage with local community groups, which is something that's, as I mentioned at the start, it's been quite a long, I won't say laborious, because it's always really interesting, but I think it's quite often I found it hard to engage groups for a longer period over multiple sessions, whereas something like this, we can just bring a group in for one event or activity, and they can really be engaged and actually feel like they're inputting something meaningful, because their voices are literally being put on the wall of the museum. Within a few days we can turn it around, so it's quite reactive, and I think that's been one of the most positive outcomes of it. The only things I'd probably think about if I maybe bought some more is I think maybe a slightly larger device would work a bit better. Maybe this is 6-inch, maybe an 8 or a 9-inch might work a bit better, just for legibility and being able to fit more onto one slide. A solid Wi-Fi or mobile data connection is really key to making this work. So, if you're thinking about exploring this, that's one thing I'd make sure you have before you buy anything. And also, the engagement side of it, we got some fantastic responses online, but we still found the best way to engage people was either in person or through physical comment slips left in the gallery. So like I say, sometimes the old ways are better. Even if the final product is digital, using traditional methods to try and speak to people seems to work. And as I mentioned, we've committed to using the digital labels in 3 exhibitions over the next year. We've got the extension year funding for our MPO projects, and at least 32 alternative interpretations, which is what we're calling these. So we're going to be busy with them over the next year, and we're going to try and find different ways to engage, in different ways for people to input into them. But overall, it's been a really successful small project that we've been able to really sort of make our own. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was fascinating. Now, Nathan's been circulating devices, so if you want to have a look at a device you haven't managed to yet, give us a wave and he can give you one of those. And questions.
I was going to say as well, after questions, if people want to come up and have a look at the devices, then please feel free.
Brilliant. Yeah, the lady here would like to have a look, Nathan, when you get a minute. And was that a question? Yeah, great. So you do need to ask questions into the mic, please. And just...
Hello, thank you. It's
Hi.
really interesting to see
Good.
other ways of bringing voices into exhibitions and museums, so fantastic. I had a sort of practical question, because I had a little play with one of them just now. Just wondering whether you can add colour photography, and whether you can design a template so that it has more colour and stands out more in the gallery.
The devices we purchased are black and white only. They're grayscale. I think it's up to 16 grey levels. So you can get quite detailed photos on there. There are colour devices out there. I think they're quite a bit more expensive, but they are available. And just to answer your other question, we actually ended up just creating a PowerPoint template that we, excuse me, that we input our content into, and it's already set at the correct size, font size. So when they're shown on the devices, it's legible and it meets all our accessibility requirements. So yeah, we've set that up and it's really streamlined the process of getting content onto there. Thanks.
Great. Any more? Oh, yeah.
Hiya, is that okay? So obviously you bought the objects, the labels,
Yeah.
but you still were having to pay for to outsource the cloud-based technology. Could you talk a bit about that? Because I reckon it would be easy enough to get a grant for that, but then the ongoing cost might, yeah.
Completely, yeah. Yes. Yeah, the bane of my life, ongoing costs for digital projects. Yeah, my manager's always telling me off that I've signed up for some new thing that's going to cost us another £600 a year for some website. So, yeah, so I knew that when I bought the devices that I'd need to pay this ongoing cost, but it was all within the budget, and we paid for a couple of years up front for the cloud hosting. I think the cost is pretty reasonable because, you know, we're using them all year, £100 for the year, you know, these devices. It is something we will be bringing in-house, and I think it's, you know, if you have some sort of IT team that you've got a decent relationship with, it's really easy to set up on your own servers, and then there is no ongoing costs. Then that's it. You've got the devices, you own them. The content management software is on your servers. You just access it through a browser from any of your local devices, network devices. So yeah, that is something we will do. At the moment, we're paying the yearly fee, but yeah, it's completely possible to eliminate that. So yeah.
Thank you. We've got a question over here.
Yes, I'm curious as to whether or not there were any issues, you know, around crowd management during, you know, busy days times, and secondly, is there any consideration for turning this into an app? You know, all of us have phones, and so, you know, the cost to buy, you know, these, you know, devices, you know, I imagine, you know, you have hundreds of pieces, so in terms of scaling it up, it you know, perhaps doesn't make sense, but if you could use an app, I mean, that's like, you know, another way to go.
Great. Thank you. Sorry, what was the first part of your question?
About crowd management, yeah,
No, that's
actually in the
been
galleries.
that side of it. We've found has been absolutely fine. You know, I think by making the labels not too wordy, they're quite sort of succinct. I think that helps with that. You know, people only read them for a minute or so. The labels, we've got the web page set up so that it actually reverts back to the first slide after 60 seconds as well. So if no one's touched it, it will reset back to its original position, which I think helps. In answer to your second question, I have actually looked into that, and there is a couple of off-the-shelf services out there that you can get involved with. You could even create something if you have your own website where you can use just printed out QR codes and people can scan them and then they can see alternative interpretations on their device. I think that works well, and it's certainly much cheaper than buying these devices. But I think the idea is we wanted to give it almost like the prestige of it being an actual label that's attached to the wall next to an artwork. I think that's part of what gives the communities and the visitors that we're engaging with, it makes it more meaningful in a way. So I think that would be lost if you did it the other way around, if it was a web page just on a mobile device. But saying that, our project for next year, we're going to do something along those lines where we're looking at putting QR codes alongside objects, and then we're going to be producing some sign language videos. So we'll basically be doing sign language labels, but they'll be accessed through a mobile device. So yeah, it's a great idea. Thank you.
Hang on a second. I'll just do.
Yeah, I was just saying that, you know, I think it's great, but, you know, if you have 100 pieces that are on display, you know, the numbers just don't make sense
Yes,
from scaling it up. But yeah, I do like the, you know, more visual look.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. Financially, you can't scale it to every object in your museum. But I think the way we've been using it, where we've been selecting highlighted objects, I think that seems to work well for us at the moment. So,
Great, thank you. Any more questions?
Thank you.
Yes.
You just mentioned sign language, and I wondered if this was a good system for doing, for interpreting information in different languages as well.
yeah, do you know what? That's actually something I was thinking about while I was writing the presentation. I thought that's a really good, a good use of it, because obviously you're not just fixed to the one slide. You tap it, and you can keep tapping it, and maybe you could have, label available in so many languages on the first slide, and you keep tapping through until you get to the language you're looking for. I think that'd be a really, really interesting use of them, to be honest. So yeah, great idea. Might steal it.
Brilliant. Any other questions for Kerem? No, I think
Great.
let's say thank you again. That was really interesting. Thank you so much, Kerem.
No, thank you. Thanks for coming, guys.
So do come up and if you want to have a closer look or chat. At 12:15 in here, we've got speakers from Roundhouse Birmingham and Geotourist coming to talk about the move from views to visits and the ramifications of that. So do come and join us at 12:15 if you can. And I'll see you then.